Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome to LP Tremors, where we talk all things vinyl and horror. And today, for the first time ever, Mr. Peter Jones is in the house. First time as a guest onto this channel. If you follow channels like Ryan's Vinyl Destination, Contrarians, even Davey's Cinema Flicks and Music Picks, you've probably seen Peter around. And with those channels, you've probably seen us together on a few panels. But for the first time, Peter is finally here. It's been a long time coming. I don't know why the fuck it's been taking so long. Peter, how's it going?
Tyler, it's great to be here. Thank you so much. And it's nice to be rejoined with you again and looking forward to it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for agreeing to talk some Maiden.
Absolutely.
So we are going to be reviewing. This is the debut of this little series that we're doing. It's just going to be a full-on Iron Maiden discography review series. Mainly looking at studio records, so we're not going to look at, live records, compilations, B-sides, whatever. Just mainly the main 17 records. So we're going to be reviewing every single record every Monday, every week, every Monday. One album each episode. For example, today we're going to be going over the first Iron Maiden debut, self-titled, from 1980, all the way 17 records later, all the way to Senjutsu. It's going to be a hell of a ride. We have a lot of records to discuss. 17 records, 17 weeks, but we can do this. It's Iron fucking Maiden, right?
That's right. That's right.
But today we're going to be talking about the iconic debut album from Iron Maiden, self-titled Iron Maiden. This was released in 1980, produced by William Malone. And William Malone, he is a guy that he's more of a musical arranger. He's worked with bands like Black Sabbath, and he doesn't have a huge discography. This is from the only record produced by William Malone from Iron Maiden. This is from EMI Records, of course. And Iron Maiden, they're a band that formed in 75, 76, somewhere around there. This album was released in 1980. But since, say, 75 all the way to 80, there's been a plethora of lineup changes already.
A phone book's worth.
Yeah, a phone book's worth. Yeah, so many guys that just didn't end up making the Iron Maiden record. And, there's a gigantic laundry list. Like, I believe one of the vocalists, his name was Dennis Wilcox. He was mainly hired just for his theatrics, not really for a voice. I never heard him sing, so I can't really say myself. Right. But there's Dennis Wilcox, and there's a bunch of other lineup changes. But Steve Harris, he is the backbone of Iron Maiden. It's pretty safe to say. Steve Harris is Iron Maiden. He is the backbone. He drives the spans. So Steve Harris being, if I guess you can technically say, the only original member. But I'm going to talk about the lineup going in 1980. So in 1980, the guys who made the record, you have Paul Di'Anno on vocals, you have Clive Burr on drums, Steve Harris, of course, on bass, you got Dave Murray on guitar, and you have the only record to feature Dennis Stratton on rhythm guitar. So yeah, there you go. A little brief history of the self-titled Iron Maiden 1980. Peter, want to take it away? Thoughts on Iron Maiden 1980?
Sure. Yeah, when we got it, 1980 is a really interesting time, and being 17, I had a long, I've got over a decade and a half because I started listening really early. I already had a lot of established bands and things that I was really into. And 1980 is a seminal year, for rock and metal. The number of albums, we could do 10 shows just on the albums that were released in 1980 alone. But what's significant about it is that some of the legacy bands, mainly Kiss and things like that, were on a pretty downward trajectory. They were going the wrong way.
Yeah.
And we were coming out of that, and the newer bands that had come up, Rush took over, and here comes Iron Maiden. And it was refreshing because it had a sound and an energy that was different than anything that came out at the time. You've got British Steel, you've got Heaven and Hell, you've got Blizzard of Oz,
Yep.
Ace of Spades. Ace of Spades was unique in its world, but the rest, not too marginalized, but those were classic rock albums, the Schenker debut, all the kinds of things. They're classic rock.
Yeah.
This was something different. And what is really unique here is that, and it's relevant because in the last week or so, there's been conversation on the net about this debut record from none other than Bruce Dickinson himself, who came out and said, it's a bag of shit.
It's a pile of shit. Yeah.
It's a bag of shit.
Mm-hmm.
He thinks it's worthless.
He hates it. Yeah.
And, you know, he has said what a lot have tried to say. Don't call this punk. Harris hates punk. Okay. Labels being what they are. But I know what my ears are telling me. And there's something going on here. And whether you want to admit it or not, that P word is ingrained in this album.
Yeah.
There is
just
punk.
Look at the album cover. It's
There
Sid
is
Vicious's dead corpse.
Yeah. There is punk elements all through this record.
Yes.
And I think the mainstay of that, and we might as well just say it right off the shot. You know, those of you who've seen me before know I've been drumming for 50 years. So we've got to talk about Clive. And before we get into the individual songs, Clive is, in my opinion, probably one of the most overlooked and underappreciated and neglected drummers in all of hard rock and metal.
Agreed.
This guy was a force.
Yeah.
And the way to describe it is, if you watch any of the live videos of him, especially watch the Rainbow Live, and any shots that you get of Clive on these earlier tracks, his right hand is like a cobra. It's like this all day, doing eighth notes or 16th notes, Rothschild, or the beginning of Prowler, or any of these other songs. That was not typical for hard rock. Hard rock was this.
Yeah.
He's going. That is punk.
That's punk.
And at a million miles an hour. That, you know, it's, and Nico, to his talents, he's exceptional. Never played with that kind of feel on the tracks that Clive played on.
No.
And I missed that. So to not get too far in the weeds, this album and the one that follows have those elements in it. They're fast, they're aggressive, they're simple, concise songs. There's changes and there are some progressive elements to it, but this is not Number of the Beast. This is not remotely what that sounds like. Clive is playing much more traditional rock metal drumming versus what he was doing on these first two records.
Right.
So, it had something that was so different. Paul's voice was very different. And we also have to say that I didn't have too many albums that had this much bass up front, forward, and busy.
Yeah.
And I've always said about Maiden is that they do things backwards. Steve is the line, the guitars support. It's exactly the opposite of most other heavy and hard rock bands.
Yeah.
Ian Hill in Judas Priest is not the forefront. He's not leading the way. It's all guitars with harmonic foundation underneath. This is exactly the opposite. And then when the guitars come out and play lines along with it, now you have this really intricate dual guitar with this really busy, melodic, fiery bass parts that nobody has done before and nobody's done since. They're the only band that sounds like this. And that's what defined the Maiden sound for me, was this aggressive, punk-like undertone with these supportive guitar harmony melodies with this runaway, crazy, aggressive bass playing. That's Maiden to me.
Yes. I definitely couldn't agree more. this, I mean, yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Bruce Dickinson calling this album a sack of shit. And this, Steve Harris pretty much saying that this album is just not punk. I mean, yeah, this album is just not punk. He can't stand punk, but as much as I love Steve Harris, he's been my hero for a very long time. This at times, this is more punk than Sex Pistols, Ramones, Clash, Dead Kennedys. Yes. It's either on that level or even more. I mean, I don't get it. And you're not going to hear much from me that's going to be considered negative with this record, because this record could easily be in my top 5 Iron Maiden records of all time.
Right.
And at times, and we're going to get into these tracks in a little bit, but I personally believe that some of these tracks, including Remember Tomorrow, Phantom of the Opera, even the title track Iron Maiden, some of these songs, or Strange Worlds is another one. Some of these songs, I don't think Bruce Dickinson can even handle. Paul Di'Anno, he is such an underappreciated vocalist at times. When you think Iron Maiden, you immediately think Bruce Dickinson. I mean,
you do now, yes.
Yeah, I mean, he's been on 14 records, and you ask somebody their thoughts about Iron Maiden. One of the first things they say is, "Oh my God, those vocals from Bruce Dickinson."
Right.
What about vocals from Paul Di'Anno? Those first 2 records. I mean, it's Paul Di'Anno. Sometimes he's really untouchable. Personally, I do prefer my Bruce Dickinson, but Paul Di'Anno, he needs to be talked about more. But I really love your points about Clive Burr. I mean, yeah, Clive Burr, because Nico is very. I always prefer. I mean, I usually think of Nico as very jazz oriented in his drumming, but Clive Burr is just no fucks given. It's the thing with the right hand. I totally agree with you, and I've definitely seen that. He is without a doubt a punk and borderline thrash metal drummer.
Yes,
I mean, and it's pretty safe to say that when you think of the term new album, new wave of British heavy metal, right, this is definitely one of the albums that somebody would typically say, what is new album? You would give them this. Right. I mean, you can say the first Angel Witch record as well, which is a genius record. Right. You can, any of the Saxon records, Denim and Leather or whatever, or Diamond Head, let's go on and on. But this, I think, is the official definition of what new album is all about. But I'm going to take it back to you, Peter. What do you think about the personal tracks off of Iron Maiden?
All right. You want to start with Prowler?
Let's start with Prowler, yeah.
All right. Great opening track. Your guitar right out of nowhere with the wah-wah.
Yeah.
And then, it's got the start punches, the unison punches with the band. And then Clive kicks them in. And then literally right off the bat, that feel I was just talking about is established right off the shot on the opening verse of the first song of the first Maiden record. It's right there.
Yes.
I mean, yes. Walking through the city looking so pretty, got to find my way. It's right there. That's punk.
Yes.
That's not classic rock drumming. Not. You would never confuse that for Bonham or Carmine or any of these other drummers. It just wouldn't. They don't play like that, even remotely. And what I like is, in this particular case, I like that the riff and the vocals kind of parallel each other.
Yes.
And it's got a lead line almost continuous through the verses. Which is an interesting thing to do right off the bat. Of course, we know that Ozzy was famous for singing melodies along with riffs. Right. And so this was kind of the same thing, but many, many times faster, and more aggressive. It's I love it when they go to the bridge. What you see in Girl, na 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 na, they hit the quick double lead right back.
Yes.
Yes. And at this point, really, Steve and Dennis and Dave are kind of in lock sync. We're not getting a lot of Steve's isms yet. It's kind of just a cohesive song.
Right.
And right off the start in the first song, we get this walking around, you know, I mean, it's that's punk. I'm sorry. There's just no other way to say it. Sorry, Bruce, you're wrong. Steve, I don't care if I hurt your feelings. Too bad. It's punk.
Absolutely.
But it's got an aggressiveness, and I love they bring the melody back, but now with the faster tempo. And then they go right back to the original feel. I think it's a great opener. It clearly establishes this new sound. Because again, even just compared to what I said with the albums from 80, this stands out.
Yes.
This is way different than any of those other records that I had mentioned, plus all the ones I didn't. So, you know, it's got the elements, it's got dual lead, it's got some strong vocals from Paul, it's got the fast, heavy punk drumming from Clive. So right off the bat, there it is as an opening staple and a great introduction that says this is Iron Maiden.
Right. Yeah, so I couldn't agree more. If you don't know anything of what Iron Maiden is all about, you would think that once you hear that first opening riff of Prowler, the dun 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 dun, wow, 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 right, you would automatically think this is just going to be another punk record, because this screams punk, and
we don't, I guess I can speak for you. We're not saying that derogatorily.
No, we're not.
Because there's the notion that punk is a bad 4-letter word. It's not.
Right.
There's all kinds of different punk, just like there's all kinds of rock and metal.
Exactly.
Some punk, not so good. But in this case, we're using it as a descriptor of delivery, attitude, energy.
Yes.
If I can summarize that for both of us.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. And Prowler is just a full-on freaking banger of a track. It's blistering. It's very, very simplistic, just like punk. Very simplistic, but it kicks you in the ass. It punches you in the face right when that opening riff starts. And that riff is a continuation throughout most of the rest of the track. And then, as far as the songwriting stance goes, again, it's very simplistic lyrics, similar to what punk is all about, right? Walking through the city, looking all so pretty. I've just got to find my way. He's not talking. Yeah, it's not
nothing deep and heavy going on here.
Yeah, like this isn't like another history lesson like you're going to see in later records, right?
Right.
This is just, it's very simplistic. It's to the point. And Prowler, I have to say, is one of my favorite tracks off of this record. That riff, it's so punchy, so simplistic, but yet again, it's so freaking catchy. And I'm assuming that's Dave Murray with the wah paddle.
Yep.
Yeah. And as far as, like I said, songwriting, very simplistic, not much going on there, but yeah, and I just love how this is just a roller coaster of a track. Sometimes it just stays with that little riff, but then as you said, that it just, whoa, what is that?
Right.
It comes, some of these, keys, they just come out of nowhere.
Right.
So Prowler is one of the most interesting, and in my opinion, one of the best tracks off this record.
I agree.
I love that track to death. I wish this track got more attention, because and we'll get to even more of the tracks, but I would rather hear Prowler live than, Running Free or Iron Maiden, the title track, because I just love Prowler. And I just feel like it just deserves more attention. But yeah, that's a little bit of Prowler. It's just it's full on punk, and at times it's honestly full on thrash as well. But yeah,
you would have a hard time defining that as metal.
Yes, you would have a hard. Yes,
I don't hear it.
I don't hear it either. I don't know what Steve Harris is talking about. As much as I love the guy, I don't know what the hell he's talking about, because this is punk. This is easily punk.
While maybe not to that degree, it sits more in the Motorhead camp than it does in the Ozzy Sabbath camp.
Ozzy Sabbath, yeah.
it sits more on the Motorhead side of things.
Right, right.
And I don't think Motorhead ever took offense to having them called punk at times.
No. God, no, I doubt it.
Right.
Honestly doubt it. But all right, but yeah, that's a little bit of Prowler for you guys. And now we're going to go into Sanctuary. Now, this is a very interesting track because I guess technically it's like a B-side, but not really. Because if you look at the original I'm talking about the US versions of or North America versions of this record when it first came out in 1980, Sanctuary was there, but it was track 7. And now fast forward to 1998 where there was a remaster version of this record. Sanctuary was still there, but it was track number 2.
Right.
And on my particular version, this is the 2015 reissue, Sanctuary is nowhere to be found on this record at all. So you just have 8 tracks there, but we're still going to be talking about Sanctuary. Peter, any thoughts on Sanctuary?
Yeah, Sanctuary is interesting. And, I prefer where it was placed on the US version. I like it later on side B, on side 2. The reason is that there are a lot of similar characteristics between Sanctuary and Prowler.
Yes.
Out of the winter came a warhorse. He's doing this, it's almost like the 2 very similar tracks, one right after another. Right. I like that it was later in side 2 on the original US version. Right. But, again, this is just full on, yes. It's just, there's nothing to slow it down. There's nothing to get in its way. I love it when Love Me Tonight, dun, 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 off it goes into all the solos.
Yes.
But then it's got this great, and this is where you first start to hear it, that na 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 na, where they're doing the dual leads with na 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 na. You're like, oh, okay, and then it gives me Sanctuary, and then it kicks right back in.
Right.
That's the first real taste of where Iron Maiden was gonna go.
Yes.
This, Steve's thundering away underneath. But you've got these 2 guitars playing really tight in unisons, right, and slight harmonies together. And that would be what I think is the prototypical sound of early Maiden. And absolutely. That's when you first really hear it. Again, the lyrics are very simple. They're just straightforward, Yes. I met up a stranger last night to keep me alive. He spends all his money on gambling and guns to survive.
Yes.
Give me sanctuary from the law and I'll be all right. You know, it's very British.
Right. It is very British. Yeah.
It's, there's not too many US bands that would do lyrics like that.
Right.
So I think that also contributes to how that fits in the new album thing.
Yes.
So it does have those kind of elements to it.
Absolutely.
But it's just high energy, and they've always kind of had this interchanged without their sets through the years. It may disappear for a tour or 2, but it didn't take long for it to come back.
Right.
And it's kind of a staple.
It is a staple. Yeah.
And they even do the longer extended dang, ticka, dang, ticka, dang, ticka, dang, ticka, hey, and then just give me Sanctuary and off they go. But it's just a full throttle. And I love the ending.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Cool. I couldn't agree more. Yes. Sanctuary, and I do agree with you that I do prefer it on side B. It seems like it's coming right off of Prowler. It really does truly feel that. It just captures that same energy and essence. However, and I think you said it perfectly, this showcases what Iron Maiden will do, later on. I think once you hear Sanctuary, it starts to incorporate those iconic guitar harmonies. You hear Paul Di'Anno really increasing his vocal range a little bit on this, especially in the chorus, like Sanctuary from below. Yeah. Like
Right.
he's really bringing that up. Something you didn't really hear much in Prowler. Prowler just a hits you in the face punk track. I think Sanctuary is more, there's still that punk element. It's very energetic, very, very attitude driven, balls to the wall. But in another case, there is a little bit more melody here. There's more of, that typical Iron Maiden feel that we all know and love.
Right. And this one doesn't have any guitar doubling the lead vocals. So this Absolutely. Is a standalone vocal delivery from Paul, with more traditional kind of twin chunking.
Absolutely. Yes.
Underneath riffing, which becomes a little more of what they move towards than the first one. First one was a little more Hendrix-ine, Uli Roth would do that, where he'd play lead all through all the vocal lines when he was with the Corpse, but that really didn't carry on, and it was kind of a one-off on Prowler.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And one more thing with Sanctuary, I think this is like a turning point for the record, and very quickly as well. As far as the lyrical theme, this turns into, when people think of this record, they think of, the horror essence. There's a lot of horror themes you're going to see on this record. And I think Sanctuary is the real start to this. Paul Di'Anno, I saw what I saw. There's that line about the knife, and, there's a lot of different horror messages and horror themes with this record. And I think it truly starts with Sanctuary. So Sanctuary onwards, this is the horror Maiden. This is what people know as a horror version of Maiden. This record, Killers, Number of the Beast. And I think it just continues Peace of Mind. Power Slave kind of drifts away from that. But this is the real start of the horror theme as well. So, and it all starts with Sanctuary, in my personal opinion.
No, I can agree with that.
Absolutely. But yeah, Sanctuary, another great track. Just the attitude is there, the punky vibe is there, but your start is starting to be that little turning point to see where Maiden's going. And you're going to see a way more of that as we go through the tracks. And speaking of one of the tracks, track 3, we got Remember Tomorrow. One of my favorite track off this record, but I'll get into that in a second. Peter, what are your thoughts?
Back on the original release, this followed Prowler.
Yeah.
And it really, really stood out as something very, very different right off the bat.
Yes.
I will just say unequivocally, this is one of my favorite Maiden tracks on any record. I don't care which album you pick.
Absolutely.
The structure, the way it's composed, the way it's delivered, the mood that it creates, is just spectacular.
Absolutely.
Something that would be used a lot, and this is a Steve-ism. I mean, my God, we could count a million songs. Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner.
Yeah.
Where, that kind of arpeggiated thematic thing that he does, excuse me, starts the opening track, the harmonics, and then in comes, these wispy guitars, they use that a lot.
Yes.
Swells, where, that would happen in all kinds of songs on later records, and then in comes Clive,
yes.
Perfect feel. And what do we have here? Paul singing. Yes. He's not shouting. He's not screaming.
Nope.
This is full on singing. And you can hear the emotion in his voice.
Oh.
Yesterday's sorrows, the way he cuts off or changes the lyrics. You scan the horizon,
Yes.
He goes,
yes.
I shall return, and then fire out it comes down. Very unison.
Yeah.
At first, no screams. The screams come later. And then they bring it right back down with that gorgeous Murray sustain that comes in on his guitar.
Yes.
They go to the second verse. They go through that. And then here is one of their first full-on progressive sections. You know, you know, you know, I could go on to the whole song, but the point is, it's got this great tom thing that Clive does, and it's, you know, one of the great things about Iron Maiden is they never resorted to using double bass drums.
No.
And, you know, the whole notion that you have to, you know, to be metal or heavy, you have to have two drums going all the time. Well, no, that just is monotonous and drives me batshit.
Right.
If it's done tastefully, cool. But they never did that. So because of that, there was more space in their sonic palette, but sometimes you wanted that kind of drive. And what Clive was great at was the same thing that Ian Pace would do at Deep Purple, is he would ride on his floor tom and put his bass drum in between. So I go between the two. So it sounded like the drums were going like this, but he would simulate them. Sounded like double bass, felt like double bass, but it went away when it was done, cleaned the mix back up, and off he went back to his pattern, you know? And then it just breaks down, and you bring it back in with another sweeping solo.
Yes.
From Murray, it's that tone. You know, he's on his, you know, he's on his up position, on his strat. It's got that sweet, rich tone to it, and it's so vintage Murray. And, you know, just perfect song, just perfect. And live, it was even better. And this is just one of the great songs in the Maiden catalog.
Yes.
And clearly one of the best on this record.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Remember Tomorrow is a freaking masterpiece. This track is, and I agree with you, it's probably one in the runs with probably my top 5 Maiden tracks of all time. It's so freaking beautiful. And you kind of touched on this, I think the main MVP of this track is Paul Di'Anno himself. Yes. I mentioned earlier on in this discussion that I find Paul Di'Anno a very underappreciated vocalist. And there's some tracks that, you know, I think Paul Di'Anno can handle better than Bruce. This is a perfect example of that, because I think there's no other vocalist I would want singing on this track than Paul Di'Anno. You feel the emotion in his voice, and you said that perfectly. And it's just, this is the start of progressive Iron Maiden. You know, if Sanctuary is kind of like a little taste of where the band is going, this is full blown where Iron Maiden is. You know, you have these beautiful melodies. You hear Di'Anno's vocal range go up and down. And then you hear that blistering, goosebump-worthy scream. Ah!
Right. I
still get goosebumps every time that track comes on. And
well, one thing, if I can interject for a sec, that I also noticed that Maiden does a lot, and it started with this one.
Yeah.
Is that the first 2 songs, when the solo sections came in, they were kind of more up-tempo backing tracks.
Yeah.
The solos in here have both the up-tempo, but then they have the slower, which allows the guitar to sing.
Yes.
And sustain notes and breathe. Yeah. And I love when Maiden does that. Yes. And it just gives it such a difference in mood, and it's almost like mystic and kind of wispy. And I love when they do that they give it enough room to get out of the way and let the guitar just sing through the top of it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good point. You know, the guitar has time to shine. It has time to breathe. And I think you mentioned about, you know, Dave Murray's beautiful solo, you know, towards the end of the track. It's face melting. Like, this track, just from beginning to end, it just gives you these series of different emotions. You know, at one point it's very melodic, very moody. You know, you have that Steve Harris isms that you mentioned.
Right.
And then it starts off with it's very eerie, it's very atmospheric. But then Paul Di'Anno's vocals come in, and like I said, it's just Paul Di'Anno is the main person on this track that makes this track what it is.
Right.
Beautiful, beautiful track. This is definitely the start of progressive Iron Maiden, and I don't know. There's not much else to be said. This is just a beautiful, beautiful.
Well, and there are many versions of Bruce doing this.
Yeah.
Live. And there's even the studio version, I think, of him redoing it on the B-sides or whatever.
Yeah.
One of those extra albums on the Eddie box.
Eddie box. Yeah.
But his voice is a little bit too smooth.
A little bit too smooth. Yeah.
You know, it doesn't have the rawness.
Right.
And the emotional vulnerability that Paul's did.
Right.
And, you know, it's like the whole thing with Ripper Owens and Halford. Tim did a tremendous job with the higher range and and actually, I think his higher notes are more consistent and stronger than Rob's. And that may be blasphemy, but they are. Just listen to him.
I agree.
But he didn't have the lower register and the range that Rob could do below, where he didn't sound like Rob.
Right.
And this is, you know, obviously Bruce can sing higher and more sustained and with you know, maybe better technique.
Absolutely.
But there was a vulnerability about Di'Anno's that really works here.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, Paul Di'Anno, he makes this whole track. I love this track to death. And it's not, you know, like a 12-minute epic track that you're going to see in later records.
No, it's 5.5 minutes.
Yeah, 5.5 minutes. That's perfect. It's perfect. It makes a statement. 5-minute epic. Next track. Speaking of next track, we have Running Free.
I love this bloody track. You know, and it's interesting because to me, this is probably first of all, it's the only song on the album that has that shuffly swing feel to it.
Yeah.
You know, again, here's Clive.
Yes.
You know, and then Steve comes in with his intro, and that would be a theme that we would get a lot, especially on the next record.
Yes.
Innocent Exile, Infinite Dreams, The Clairvoyant. We could go on and on, you know, with a backing where Steve does the intro.
Right.
But to me, this is a straightforward, stripped down, straightforward, punkish rock and roll song on the whole record.
Absolutely.
There's no prog elements in here. There's no tempo changes. There's no, it's all just right there.
That's right there. Yeah.
You know, and it's just 16 a pickup truck, out of money, out of luck. Got no place to call my own, hit the gas, and here I go. Straightforward, you know? I mean, spent the night in the LA jail, listened to the sirens wail. They ain't got a thing on me. I'm running wild. I'm running free. That's pretty punky.
It is very punky. Yeah.
You know, and the guitars are super simple. What I really love is during the breakdown, after the solo section, where they just do the junk,
right.
I have to distinguish and delineate between what they did here and what they did live after this, because they changed it. They went I don't want that in there.
No,
I just wanted to just go chunk. I love that they don't break it up on the studio record. And then it's just I'm running free. It's just, you know, obviously, and then perfect. It's vintage Iron Maiden, simple, straightforward, nothing complex. And I love the feel of it. And it stands out as the only one on here that's got that feel.
Exactly.
And I think it's a great track. And I love what they do with it live, you know, to extend it and do the shouting and the screaming thing. I love that. So. Yeah,
it's definitely, Running Free is definitely a live staple for Iron Maiden at this point. However, I actually just saw them, what was it, a month or two ago. Running Free was not on the set list, surprisingly. But I, to be honest, I really missed it. That's one track I can hear all day, and it's probably, and we've mentioned, like when we talk about Prowler and Sanctuary, pretty simplistic tracks for the most part. This track is probably the most simplistic out of the whole record. It's very punky. It's very just stripped down. And I should have mentioned this earlier. One critique with this record that you hear time and time again is the production.
Right.
You hear like maybe like it's just a very stripped down raw production. The bass could be boosted up a little bit, blah, 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 blah. And while I get that, I think if this was a little bit more polished, the whole energy and essence of what this record is all about would be stripped away.
I think so too.
You want this record to sound dirty, sound a little raw. You want to hear that compression, right? You want to hear, all those little, maybe, I don't know, something about. I've never had an issue with the production off this record at all. I just felt like I need to mention.
Well, and again, if we put things in context, at least from my experience,
yeah,
Killers didn't exist. I have nothing to compare it to.
No, that's right. That's right.
I have nothing to compare it to. Yeah. I'm just listening to it going, this kicks serious ass.
Right.
And sure, you get Killers, you see Martin's name on there.
Yep.
You hear it and you go, oh, okay.
There it is.
They sound better. Yes, it does sonically sound better. And those songs are crafted to go with the different sound.
Absolutely.
These songs sound like they were crafted to be muddy and kind of dirty.
Muddy and dirty. Absolutely. I absolutely agree.
I think that works perfectly. Yeah. Okay, great. Compare it long after the fact. Everybody's smarter 5 minutes from now than they are right now.
Absolutely.
Let alone, 4 decades ago.
Absolutely.
No, and I don't have a problem with it on any level whatsoever.
Me either. And the main reason why I'm bringing up that production is I think Running Free is, the exact definition of what I'm talking about here. It does sounds very dirty, very gross, just very it sounds like it was recorded in somebody's basement, just to put it lightly. But that is the beauty of this track. It's stripped down, it's dirty. And this is why this record, in my opinion, has that punk rock essence. A lot of it has to do with that production value, right?
Can't you hear somebody in a flat somewhere in the East or West End?
Right.
Cranking this out with their cheap guitar and their crappy amp?
Absolutely. I could easily agree. I easily agree. Yeah, in this track, it just continues that. There's nothing really special going on, but it just has that attitude and that charisma that we all know and love. Whenever we hear a punk record, whenever we put on, Nevermind the Bullocks or put on the first Clash record, whatever, you feel something. You feel, 4 or 5 guys just hanging out in the basement, just jamming out. You feel that with Running Free as well. And
also coming right off of Remember Tomorrow, it's a really nice change of pace.
Yes, a gigantic change of pace. Yes.
Yeah, you had this little heavier, a little more kind of an epic in a sense.
Yes.
And then it's just like, nope, here we go.
Yep, okay, back to punk. Yeah. Back to us just fucking around. Yeah.
Right.
And then, but yeah, that it's just overall very simplistic. Because like that chorus, what other line is I'm running free? Yeah, I'm running free.
Right.
It's a simplistic. Right. But yeah, you do still hear those Iron Maiden isms. There's some Steve Harris isms that you hear throughout the rest of this track. But for the most part, nothing really too special here, but it's still one hell of a track.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a little bit of Running Free. Now we have a brilliant epic, all known as Phantom of the Opera. Take it away.
Closer on side 1.
Closer on side 1, yes.
This to me is fully formed. Like Remember Tomorrow. This even more so than that, from a prog standpoint, this is full on Maiden.
Yes.
Just absolutely full on Maiden. And first of all, it's without a question one of the greatest riffs they've ever written. You know, and then as they come in the unison, all right, that's punk.
Oh,
That's
absolutely.
Metal later changed the feel. Priest, like what Priest was doing on British Steel, didn't have that frantic breakup that they were, it was different.
Mhm.
And theirs was a little more straight. This was kind of broken up and swingy.
Yes.
So you've got this huge intro where they're just and then like the opener, you have a riff and a matching accompanied vocal, all doing the exact same phrasing, same rhythmic structure, everything.
Yeah.
I've been looking at you so long now, you won't get away from my grasp.
Yes.
Everybody in unison. It's just punch. Everybody goes, and we've got a little backup vocal from Steve going on there, and so they go through the second verse, waiting for the curtain to fall, blah, blah, blah. And then one of the biggest tempo changes and the biggest diversions from a song that they've done so far. Keep your distance, walk away. And then, with Clive now double-handed, he could have just gone, it's not the same.
No.
So now he's going, in that extra 16th note gives it this frantic feel.
Right.
Even though the guitars stay the same, if I'd have played, I could take that same track, play 3 different drum beats to it, and it would be 3 completely different songs.
Right.
And then all of a sudden they break down into the slow section. And then now here we are, this great Dave Murray solo coming out over the top. And then we get, just like so many records post this, like and just like, this is vintage Maiden. Absolutely vintage. And then when they right, you're like, oh my God, it's so perfect.
It's perfect.
And then they go back. You're like, it just kept going from strength to strength.
Right.
And then the way they tied it back into the riff, got back into the opening riff, and finish out is just perfection. Genius. It is perfection. Ultimate Iron Maiden. This is one of Harris's, by far, one of his greatest compositions.
Yes.
And it would be hard for that not to be the apex of this record. In most cases, I've got Phantom is my favorite track on this record. It's just so bloody perfect.
It's a beautiful, beautiful track. So brilliant. And I know I mentioned that Remember Tomorrow is probably my favorite off of this album, but Phantom of the Opera, if it's not a tie, it's extremely close. I really can't decide which one I like better. Remember Tomorrow. I think I like Remember Tomorrow just a bit more, but Phantom of the Opera is wow. You mentioned that beautiful riff, that and then Paul Di'Anno just singing in sync with that guitar melody. Fucking brilliant. This is the true start of epic Iron Maiden. If Remember Tomorrow isn't, Phantom of the Opera definitely is.
Well, this is and the beauty is you've got to get Clive out of the way.
Yes,
because it would be too messy. If he was trying to sing that over a drum part, it'd be a train wreck.
Yes.
And then it also has this tension and release, tension and release, tension and release. The drums drop out. And just like oh my God,
It's
it just kept doing this and this instead. It wasn't
up and down,
flatlining or
no.
anything.
No.
Maybe I would suggest that Remember Tomorrow could have a little more impact, because I think that of the two was a formula they didn't repeat much.
Right.
Phantom, you can hear it in a lot of other tracks,
Yes.
parts of it moving along, especially the epics.
Yes. Yes.
But Remember Tomorrow is a song style that they didn't revisit.
No.
And I think that's why, from a uniqueness, at least to my ears, that track really stands out as being special, because it wasn't something they went back to in their career.
No, yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah, Fan of the Hour is such an interesting track. This always reminds me of, say, King Crimson meets Ramones. At times, it's, you have these beautiful progressive elements, and I'm not sure if I would call Iron Maiden a progressive band, but they're a band with progressive elements. And
Yes.
This is the perfect example of that. But just like the rest of this album, it's still continuing that punk rock element. And just because of those, there's a lot of up and down motions with this particular album. I think some of Dave Murray's best guitar performances are on this track.
Right.
Solos left and right. This is just everything Iron Maiden is going forward. They're going to explore this way more.
Yes.
And so Phantom of the Opera, it's a beautiful start to, what you're about to hear in later records. And what else can be said? I mean,
well, I think too that it's really important compositionally to give credit that a transition, just for the sake of a transition, may not be musically appealing.
Yes.
It has to be done smoothly. It has to be done in context of the composition itself.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that Maiden does here that maybe they didn't do so well later in their career is blend those transitions and how they went from one to the next.
Yeah.
so seamlessly.
Yeah.
And, one of the knocks on Dream Theater for progressive fans is that sometimes they're throwing in changes just to say, look how good I am. Look how many notes I can play. Look how complex this is.
Absolutely.
And maybe it doesn't sit as well.
Right.
Versus, say, like what Rush can do on something like Natural Science or Jacob's Ladder, right, or La Villa or something like that. These aren't that kind of prog. But what I'm saying is every one of those changes that we talked about in Phantom weren't jarring, oh, that doesn't belong here. It still sits in the same camp. It's still all part of the same soup. Right. But it's just different. And that's what made it work, and how they brought it back and went back to the original theme and brought that riff back and ended that way is great writing. And I think that needs to be acknowledged. That's just really well done.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Yeah. And I have to talk about the pre-chorus, or I guess you can call it the chorus off this track. You know that, I know that, it's right. I love it. That's probably what, I guess you can call it the chorus. That's probably one of my favorite choruses in the Iron Maiden discography.
And it's so melodic.
It's so melodic, so punchy. I love it. And it's just, I love the opening riff. It just builds up until you get to that vocal harmony.
And to contrast, we said in the earlier verses, you got to get the drums out of the way.
Yes.
Drums are now here on the chorus. And now they've got the impact of the whole band playing in unison.
Yes.
With the vocals soaring over the top of it. So now it's got an even more punch to it.
There's more
so that even makes it have more dramatic style when you're listening to it, in contrast to the verses where the drums pull out.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. But yeah, that's a little bit of Phantom of the Opera, closing out side A, and what a terrific way to close out side A. Now you get into side B, opening with a little bit of an instrumental. We have Transylvania.
Yeah, there's a handful of instrumentals in their catalog. To me, this is really pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a good what's the word I want to use? Demonstration, or, coming out for them instrumentally. It's just good riffs, some good solos. I don't think it's anything really major. It's certainly not something like a loss for words or something like that, which is way more complex, and way more developed and a lot more involved. It's just straight, but it's got, you could have written lyrics to this and turn it into a song. It's got the same aggressiveness that Prowler and Sanctuary has, with some of the rhythmic elements that you found in the middle of Phantom. Excuse me. And so it fits right in with the album. It's probably not one of my favorites. It's fun to listen to, just to listen to Clive wail away. So I like it from that standpoint, but it would probably be one of the lower tracks on the record for me.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And this is coming from somebody that's, not big into bands doing instrumentals, unless it's like a jazz record or something like that. But I'm not big into bands doing instrumentals. I think Iron Maiden, they did better instrumentals. Like later on, like you have Genghis Khan off of Killers, you have Lost for Words, which I think is brilliant. We'll get into Power Slave later on, but Transylvania, I think this is a track that, and I think you said it perfectly, it's a track that didn't really need to be an instrumental. I think you could have easily just stuck in some lyrics on Transylvania. I do really like the opening riff, that again, going back to that punk thing, right? Then it rips into
that one's got an even different feel. Because where Phantom was, this one is very different.
Right.
They didn't repeat that groove through the rest of the album. That's the first time we hear that. And maybe that was now, but I hear that now that I know that the right time has come, and it will surely be true, right?
Yeah, you do. It's like a precursor.
There it is. There it is. So that shows up
in Seventh Son,
albums down the road, but that was established on this first record.
Yeah.
So maybe from that standpoint, I can maybe alter my thought just a bit here. It introduced that pattern and that rhythmic motif into their arsenal. And really, we haven't heard a gallop yet. Which most people would say is the ultimate Maiden groove. Trooper, we can go through everything. There's a gallop in almost every album after that.
Right.
There's no gallop here yet.
There's no gallop,
which I think is interesting. But this was kind of as close to it without dipping the toes yet. But
absolutely, yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's not really much else to say about Transylvania. It's just like 3 minutes and change instrumental, 4 minutes. And
4 minutes.
Yeah. And it's not like, the Redheaded Stepchild, it's not like that track that's just kind of like, why is that there? It fits in well with all of these other tracks. It's just probably, one of those tracks that goes on for 4 minutes and then, okay, next track. Not a whole lot you're going to get out of it, but then again, there kind of is. It's one of those weird tracks. But then right after that, we're going back to melodic. We're going into Strange World. What would be considered kind of like a balladish for Iron Maiden.
Right.
Peter, take it away.
But I can't imagine listening to Strange World without the decaying of Transylvania ahead of it, because they overlap each other and the guitar starts to come in. So if that track wasn't there, this would sound differently as it started.
Right.
I will say this is one of my top 3 favorite songs on this record. Yeah. I had wished to God they had done more songs like this.
Yes.
It's one of their best songs. The atmosphere on this is amazing.
Yes.
And I think it's the best vocal that Paul did with the band. And maybe there's some on Killers that are great, but if anybody thought he couldn't sing, sorry, you way wrong.
Yes.
Yes. And I could listen to this song over and over and over again and never, ever tire of this. It is such a nice change of pace. It is, I don't know how you can listen to this and go, well, if there was a better production, screw that.
Yeah.
Just screw it.
Mm-hmm.
The only place where we can dream. Like, that's as melodic as any song you will ever find by any band ever.
Yes.
It's, he gets to this, and the guitar solo, I believe, is Dennis on this. Because I was reading something that during the recording of this and everything, one of the things that kind of got him canned was he had added some Queen-like harmonies and some backing tracks to some of the songs or something. And they're like, what are you doing? He was a much more AOR guy. Yeah. He wasn't a hard rock guy.
Right.
But the solo on this just screams what Adrian would bring to the band later, because it's definitely got that early pre-Adrian kind of thing.
It does.
God, I mean, it's just, if you can't sing along to this, you're dead.
Yes.
You've got no feelings. This is, like, oh, maybe it's not heavy or metal. I don't give a crap. Dream On's not heavy or metal, but it's Aerosmith.
Right.
I would have loved for them to explore more songs and compositions like this, even with Bruce.
Yes.
Because I don't know who came up with the melody, whether Paul did or it was Steve or a combination or whatever. I know it's Steve's song.
It's probably Steve, yeah.
But I don't care. This is just a brilliant composition, and I just absolutely love this song.
Yeah, this is a track this is nothing like anything Iron Maiden would ever do. This is just a beautiful ballad. It still has obviously those little horror themes that are sprinkled into this record, of course. And it's just so freaking atmospheric, so beautiful. It's kind of going back to like the Remember Tomorrow thing, where it has this just overall beautiful melody, and just from start to finish, you're feeling something. Again, I think Paul Di'Anno can sing a good fucking ballad.
Yes.
I'm telling you. I mean, we heard that in Remember Tomorrow, and you're definitely hearing it in Strange World.
And there are elements of this that would show up in, let's say, the early portion of Children of the Damned.
Yeah. Yes.
He is walking like a small child.
Right.
That's very melodic.
Yeah.
It's, and it, of course, goes a different direction. So there was that, but that wasn't too common. No. That's not, it was either punch you in the face right off the bat or an intro that would take you into something, and next thing you're full on. Right. But this really stands out to me, and over both records that he was on, as like I said, I think this is his best vocal performance of his entire career with me. I
100% agree. This track, Remember Tomorrow, and then we're going to get into Killers with Prodigal Son. I'm going to say the same thing probably.
Yes.
This is top-notch Paul Di'Anno. He is the real backbone in this particular track. His vocals are just, I honestly think that he sings a better ballad than Bruce Dickinson. And I love Bruce.
But and to carry through our theme, there's not one punk element in here whatsoever.
No, not at all.
No not trace, no element, nothing.
Yeah.
This is just a great, straightforward song that you could have easily heard in the early 70s from all the singer-songwriters.
Yes.
You pick one. I mean, it doesn't
one,
matter.
yeah.
You know, Carly Simon, James Taylor, Carole King. I mean, you go ahead and pick them with Maiden instrumentation and Maiden themes.
Exactly.
Stunning.
Sonny, it's a beautiful, beautiful track front to back. I really can't say anything negative about Strange World. And I'm gonna probably be in sync with you. This is probably my top 3 favorite Iron Maiden tracks off this album.
Yeah.
This, Remember Tomorrow, and Phantom of the Opera are just beautiful tracks and define what this record's all about. Now, a song about a prostitute, Charlotte the Harlots.
That's right. Good old Dave Murray. You know, who Bruce said once, you know, it's as often as a pregnant elephant. You know, that Dave will come out with a full composition.
Yeah.
I don't think there are many songs in their catalog that both lyrically and image wise match Eddie and the whole London horror film, Jack the Ripper kind of thematic stuff as Charlotte the Harlot.
Right.
You know, I mean, obviously everybody can relate to the lyrics.
Yeah.
You know, and they're a mouthful. There's a lot of words going on here. But again, we've got a lot of a lot of punk elements in this one.
Yes.
You know,
absolutely.
You know, da 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 da, you know, and then they do what they did in the earlier songs, get to the slower section, you know, and when there was a time when you left me standing there, picking up pieces of love off the floor again. Killer singing from Paul.
Yeah.
Just really nailing it.
Yeah.
And the sweeping solos that are in here. And he's just, you know, and then he comes out, you know, and it goes back. It's a more epic than I had remembered it being.
Right.
And I didn't recall that it had the extra changes. I don't know why it didn't register until I was listening to it again. It's just a really, really great song. And from Dave, it's fully Maiden-esque. I mean, Steve could have easily written this and you would have said, yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, it's very melodic. It's, you know, and again, the choruses are just super easy. Charlotte the Harlot, show me your legs. Charlotte the Harlot, take it to your back. Charlotte the Harlot, you know, dun 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 dun. There's great elements in it. Do 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 do.
Right.
Do 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 do. Yeah. All classic Maiden. It's you know, it's great track and coming off of Strange World. I have to say here, because now we're just one from the end. The pacing on this album is extraordinary.
Yeah.
Everything now, Sanctuary notwithstanding on the remix of what we talked about. But if you can imagine Sanctuary coming after Strange World, right in the bloody face.
Oh yeah.
But you know, on this, it's, you know, it's perfect string. I mean, everything flowed perfectly from one to the next. You didn't go, oh no, that doesn't fit there. And even the instrumental is perfectly placed.
It is.
You know, coming off of Phantom, it's like boom, here we go. It's a classic Maiden. It's great composition, great melody. Paul kills it, and I love the time changes and the rhythm changes, and it's just a great song.
Absolutely, yeah. So Charlotte the Harlot. So this is an incredible album front to back. I can't really say much negative about this album, as you've heard. Charlotte the Harlot is probably the one track I can kind of leave behind.
Okay.
But that doesn't really take anything away from Charlotte the Harlot, because this is it's stacked between so many great Iron Maiden tracks. This is the one track that falls a little flat for me. For some reason, and I've always kind of felt this way, it just feels like it just doesn't feel too memorable to me. And I think it could be because of where this song is placed on this record, because I think, you have these punk crossover metal tracks like Prowler, Sanctuary, even Transylvania to an extent. Like you have these very like punkish tracks, Running Free. I think this is the one song that I don't think it's necessarily doing anything new, but it's still a punchy track. You still hear those great Iron Maiden isms. Steve Harris is definitely all over this track. I think if I was gonna hold the crown to Charlotte the Harlot with one member, it would be Steve Harris, because this is some of Steve Harris's best bass performances for sure. Structurally, I think the song is structured very well. The chorus is very, very punchy. Like Charlotte the Harlot, show me your leg, Charlotte the Harlot. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, so it's an up and down type of swing. But then again, for some reason, it just doesn't feel like the most memorable track. There's nothing really reaching out to me as, oh my God. Still a great track. I am not pissed off at all when, this track is playing on my turntable. And this is a track I can really still have fun with. And I know I feel like I'm giving this song a lot of shit, but in my honest thoughts about Charlotte the Harlot, it's just, it kicks you in the ass and it leaves. Great, great track. And it's again, still a track that falls a little flat for me off this record, but it's not taking anything away at all. Awesome track.
I'm going to contradict myself here for a second and suggest something to you.
Yeah.
If Charlotte the Harlot had opened side one. Yeah.
That would have been a thought. Yeah. And I mentioned kind of like where this song is placed. I think if it opened up side B or something like that, I think maybe I would feel a little bit differently.
Does it feel out of place following Remember Tomorrow, Phantom, Strange World? Does it feel out of place?
Not necessarily, because that's one thing I really like about this album. It feels unpredictable at times. It's coming Prowler, Sanctuary, two blistering punk tracks. Then you have Remember Tomorrow, which is completely different. Then you have, Running Free, which is go back to the punk thing. Then Phantom of the Opera, an epic rager. Then it has an instrumental. Then it goes back to the melodic. So it's very, very unpredictable. And that's one thing I really like. And you mentioned about the pacing about this record, which I totally agree with you. But I don't know. It's just something about, I just feel like it's not doing anything new here. I can say the same thing from Charlotte.
Do you think the lyrics keep it more in high esteem than the actual song itself?
I can see that. Yeah, I would agree with you. Like I said, it's not a track that I'm going to skip. It's really not.
It's Charlotte.
It's Charlotte. It's Charlotte. Exactly.
And can you have Eddie without Charlotte?
You can't have Eddie without Charlotte. No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's just something about it. I just don't find anything that's gripping me here. There's nothing that's really capturing me. It's not necessarily doing anything new, like I said, but it is a great track. And Eddie is, there won't be Eddie without Charlotte the Harlot.
Well, and this one also feels very, very British to me.
It does feel very British. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. But yeah, that's a little bit of Charlotte the Harlot. It's still, I'm not taking anything away from Charlotte the Harlot. It's still genius. This whole album's genius. Now we are at the closing track, self-titled Iron Maiden, live sample for Iron Maiden. They are not going to they're not going to do a show and skip this track. Right. Iron Maiden, Iron Maiden.
Well, this is, and it always has been my least favorite on the album.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's dripping with punk. There's Clive's right hand again, at 1,000,000 miles an hour.
Yeah.
I think the whole song just kind of stems around the sing along, the chorus, oh, well, wherever you are, Iron Maiden's going to get you. I mean, it's just lyrically perfect for a band called Iron Maiden, right?
Yeah.
it's got the elements to it. It kind of explains the cover. I want to see your blood. I want to, I want you to stand and stare.
Yes.
See the blood. Iron Maiden can't be fought. Iron Maiden can't be sought. It's an okay riff. I don't think it's as strong as the rest of the record.
Wow. Okay.
And maybe I've just heard it too many times. It's I don't want to say it's almost like a Hello There, by Cheap Trick.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? I love Hello There.
Yeah.
But it is kind of or Good Night Now. That would probably be more than Hello There, because Hello There is a kind of a good intro. If you did Good Night Now live the way they do, Good night now, ladies and gentlemen. It's the end of the show. It's time to go. I feel like this is we were Maiden, we're dangerous. Bye. Yeah. Okay.
Wow. Okay.
There's barely two verses. The chorus is just a shout line here or there. So, it's really straightforward. But it just really doesn't do much for me at this stage. Back then, I probably thought it was okay.
That melodic riff, you don't feel anything when you hear that riff? That do 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 do.
No,
like you don't feel anything with that riff.
No, I don't like the. It's the four on the floor. The gaga 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 gaga. Why don't you come into my room? Why don't you show me out?
Right.
And then the chorus.
Yes. Yeah.
It just feels a kind of bit too frantic, if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense.
It's just a little too much of the punk element in this one.
Wow. Okay.
If that makes sense, it just hits my ears that way.
Okay. Yeah. That's fair.
But I would prefer Prowler or Sanctuary or Charlotte or something over that one. I don't want to say it's a throwaway track. It's not. But it's my least favorite on the record.
Yeah. And everything you said, I actually feel about Charlotte the Harlot.
Yeah.
But so Iron Maiden, the title track. I know where you're coming from, Peter, but I have to say this is one of my favorite tracks off the album as well.
Cool.
That opening riff, that melody, something in me just feels something when I hear that riff. And then when Paul goes, oh yeah,
right.
I love it. It's just it grips me. It tells me what Iron Maiden's all about. It's very punky. It is frantic. I will give you that.
Well, let me say this then, if I can. If I focus strictly on Paul doing it,
yeah,
I think it is higher. I have Bruce in my head.
Yeah.
Even after listening to the record, I hear Bruce.
Yeah, I see that.
And that doesn't work for me.
Okay.
So to be fair, full disclosure, the album version, I definitely like better than anything they've done with it live since Bruce joined.
Right.
The way Bruce does it, to me, it sounds kind of novelty and throwaway-ish.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, no,
I'll clarify that.
Yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from. There's definitely when, this is obviously, like I said, this is like a live staple for Iron Maiden. They're not going to skip this track during a show at all.
Right.
I do prefer the studio versions. Every time I hear the song live, I do prefer, Paul Di'Anno singing this. So I definitely see where you're coming from with that. And, but I don't know, something about Iron Maiden, the title track, just grips me. And I think maybe it's my love for horror movies. This is a track coming straight off a horror movie.
Right.
This depicts a horror movie. If you, and I've said this previously, there's a lot of horror themes sprinkled into this record.
Right.
this track is a full-blown horror movie at this point. Yeah, I think it's the lyrics that really get me, because again, my love for slashers, my love for horror movies in general. You come into my room, I want to show you all my wares. I just want to see your blood. I want you to stop and stare. See the blood flow. It's something. It's so energetic. It gets me every time. This is one of my favorite tracks off the record.
I do love the interlude.
Yes. Isms. Yeah.
I do love that. And it is very cinematic.
Right.
It seems less dangerous when Bruce did it.
I agree with you. Yeah. He sounds a little too polished, a little too clean.
Yeah. I almost wanted a little more horrifying.
Horrifying. Yeah. I get that.
And that only happens in this early stage of their career.
Right. Yeah, the first few records, absolutely.
Yeah, we were talking offline about the Made in Japan show on the Killers tour.
Yeah,
I love the version of Iron Maiden that's on that.
Absolutely.
And so,
yeah, I get.
But
that.
As far as the rest of the record goes, I think there are others that I prefer.
But let me ask you this: do you think this is just a great track to close the record?
Oh yeah. You wouldn't put it anywhere else.
You wouldn't put it anywhere else, exactly.
No, you have to end with Iron Maiden's gonna get you no matter how far.
Right.
You watch it above, Iron Maiden wants you for dead. That you've got to end with that.
Yes.
You have to have that last.
You have to have that. You have to have that.
It's got to be the closer.
It's got to be the closer. It's absolutely got to be closer. So yeah, 9 tracks. This is a phenomenal record front to back. As you saw, we didn't really capture anything considered negative. Maybe a track or two that maybe missed us a little bit, but overall, even the tracks that we think are towards the bottom, this is a great album front to back.
Absolutely.
I love this album to death. Peter, let me ask you, how would you rate this album? 1 out of 10, 1 out of 5?
Ooh. This is tough. And it's in my top 5.
Top 5? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say that once we get to our next episode, I do believe there is a serious increase in improvement that comes on Killers. But there is just something so unique. Again, this is the only one that's going to have the quote horrible production. All the rest of them are polished as hell.
Right.
You can talk about later ones when Shirley's around or whatever. That's another story.
Yeah.
But after that, production's not an issue.
No.
With Maiden. Martin is there for a long time. And all the Iron Maiden records sound great.
They sound great.
This is the outlier.
Yes.
This is the most, and we keep using punk. If people in the, when we post this and put the comments, you're like, that's not punk. You guys are out of your bloody mind. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Then, definitions being what they are, what is it?
What is it?
Because like I said, it's not Sabbath.
All right.
It's not Priest. It's not any of the other. And they say, well, it's the new wave. I say, okay.
Okay. Yeah.
That's fine. But even Diamond Head and Saxon and other ones have elements that tie to more legacy bands.
Yeah.
This happens to come out of, I think, a part of London at the time that all the jean wearing, short haired, spiky, patch wearing headbangers,
right?
Who maybe say even they may take offense to the word punk, but punk is a huge definition and it's got a lot of elements. And as we said before, there were little pick and choose. There were little things that came in that says, okay. And those things very quickly started to leave as the band progressed. And it wasn't too long before an album or two. And a lot of those elements were long gone. Absolutely. And they were much more into the metal and heavy hard rock stage than they were anything on this one. It's easily going to, you know me, because when I do rankings, I don't like to have two albums with the same ranking.
Yeah, right.
God, it is. If this sounds low, it's not. It's easily an 8.5, 8.5 or higher.
Yeah.
It's a must own. It was the first album. It was the one that got me into it. If this sucked, I wouldn't have bought Killers. Well, it's just that simple.
No,
if
that's
it
a good
sucked,
point.
I probably wouldn't have bought the next one. I would have been, yeah, okay, whatever.
Right.
I wouldn't have liked it.
Yeah, 8. I think that's a fair score, 8.5, and it looks like I'm going to echo you because I was exactly thinking, an 8.5 record, and
Right.
it's not. It's really tough. It is in my top 5 as well. Where I would rank that in my top 5, I have no idea yet. But
no, me either.
But yeah, this is in my top 5 Iron Maiden records. 8.5 out of 10. This is definitely a must buy. If you haven't heard this, for the love of God,
which cover do you like better?
Oof. I think I like my cover just a little bit more. It's a little bit brighter. But I don't know. That's
to follow the horror theme. If that had been the original cover in 80.
Yeah. I do like the red-eyed Eddie though. I really like the red-eyed. And
so in the comments, folks, tell us. You like the
tell us in the comments,
reissue?
Please. That I think both covers are great. This is one of my favorite Iron Maiden covers of all time. Any version. It's such a badass cover. And Steve Harris, I don't know what the hell he's talking about, but that's Sid Vicious's dead corpse right there. That's Sid Vicious right there.
Eddie does look a little more disheveled here.
He does look disheveled, yeah.
Yeah. This is more like I don't want to say stereotypical, dead guy.
Yeah,
I might skin, but this has a certain kind of unsettlingness to it.
There's an unsettlingness to it. Yeah, both. I don't know. Yeah, that's a tough one. Yeah,
but I loved the fact, and he carried it on, that Derek gave him a forked tongue.
Yeah,
I love that.
Great.
Love that. It's such a subtle, small thing that he's got that forked freaking tongue.
Absolutely, it's so great.
And you're like,
so
now,
great.
If this cover, if he'd been wearing earrings, all that kind of stuff, you say, well, that would be even probably more punk. But you can't even see his ears anyways. I mean, you don't even know if he has any.
Right. It's funny. Yeah. So I think this is a good place to wrap this little review up. Iron Maiden debut from 1980, masterpiece of a record, and definitely sets the tone for what we're going to hear in later records. Seriously, one hell of a debut.
And screw the conversations about production, folks.
Screw the conversations about production. Couldn't agree more.
Just listen to it.
Just listen to it. Have a blast. It's killer tracks, killer album.
And we have to say, one of the great logos in
one of the best
in marketing history. Yeah. That font is
it's
perfect. And they
iconic.
never
iconic. Absolutely. So yeah, definitely check out Iron Maiden. It's an 8.5 out of 10 for both of us. Killer album. Now, Peter, I know you don't have a YouTube channel, but have you been doing anything with the Contrarians or on Ryan's Vinyl Destination?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I've kind of had a busy couple past weeks. A couple of shows that have come out on Peter Kerr's Rock Daydream Nation. We did a deep dive into Whitesnake's Slide It In.
There you go.
And even going so far as to compare and contrast the US version versus the UK version.
Yep.
That was very entertaining. We finished up last week with a deep dive into Electric Warrior by T-Rex. And, was that really the start of glam? Maybe not. And what our thoughts were about that. Done some Contrarians ones. They picked my topic for this month, which was great. I used the title that, kind of loosely Album Wars. It's not really, one album's good, one album's crap.
Right.
It's just preferences. What do you like? So this was a deep analysis into Left Overture versus Point of No Return by Kansas.
Oh, nice.
And just great conversation about two just absolutely spectacular records.
Right.
And we also did, speaking of Maiden, we did a great kind of a versus. We did Bruce Dickinson's Accident of Birth versus Iron Maiden's Brave New World, and compared and contrasted and picked our favorites out of those. So all of those are available and out on the Mighty Web. So check out those. And I appreciate you asking. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Contrarians, Rockstage Dream Nation, and everything, all of those channels or videos will be linked in the description below. So be sure to check out the link in the description below. All right. So now you are watching LP Tremors. Join myself and Peter for the next episode where we will be reviewing 1981's Killers. That's going to be great. That's going to be every Monday. So every Monday, it's going to be one album each episode. So, then right after Killers, Number of the Beast, Peace of Mind, Somewhere in Time, list goes all the way up until Senjutsu. It's going to be a hell of a ride. But, so that's going to be every Monday. Myself, Ryan Gavalier, and David Gallagher, we review Friday the 13th movies. That's bi-weekly every Friday. So we're going to be doing Jason Takes Manhattan Part 8. That's going to be on Friday, this coming Friday. So that should be a blast. Definitely check those out. But other than that, stay tuned for more record reviews, movie reviews, whatever, so on and so forth. That's just about it. Is there any closing remarks? Anything you want to add?
No, just thank you so much for including me in this. And this is going to be a fun ride. And
absolutely it is.
There's just such great stuff in here to talk about. So
I mean, it's Iron fucking Maiden we're talking about. I don't see it declining anytime soon. Absolutely. All right. So
thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Anytime, Peter. Anytime. So for Peter, for myself, this is LP Tremors. Thank you guys so much for sticking it out with us. Up the irons.
Up the irons.
Stay metal. Stay safe. Bye, guys.
Bye.